all streams are not created equal, and that's especially bull trout streams. The bull trout have never been stocked anywhere, so the bull trout that exists in these streams have lived here for thousands of years and have evolved on this landscape. So they've evolved in these systems, and it's really important that we kind of sustain these native species in these places.
Vista, as part of the relicensing for the 2 lower Clark Fork dams, annually funds and helps supports tributary habitat acquisition and enhancement programs. And so we help with our partners on the Vermilion, among other tributaries, to mitigate for the effects our dams have on native salmonids. Vista and our cooperators are really concerned about bull trout for mitigation, and as they're a keystone species, if you take care of bull trout, the stream's really functioning at its best level.
There's definitely some pretty bad places in the Vermilion River that could use fixed. The 2 projects we've done it's crazy the difference that it made on that river. You know, those places were pretty dang bad, and they're looking pretty good now. So
that system has been so destabilized. I mean, there's just been so much sediment, and some of the banks are just eroding left and right. Not only eroding laterally, but then it's filling in places. So there's artificial bars formed that the river's now down cut through, and then it jumped over in another side channel, and now you have a Brady condition. So there's a lot going on in the Vermilion River.
You know, everything was checked out in the basin. We walked all the roads, we looked at culvert condition, we looked at sediment from that aspect, you know, fine sediment coming in. Then we walked the creek channel, we looked at the sediment introduction from, you know, these unstable areas, and the majority of the things that were affecting the channel condition were from in-channel sources. You know, raw banks, slides, things like that.
Looking at the habitat in Miners Gulch prior to the restoration, it was essentially just a big long riffle. Data from reference reaches, data collected by the U.S. Forest Service, suggests that we should have had a lot more wood and a lot more pools in a section of stream. So basically the stream was pretty denuded, pretty simplified habitat.
There was a previous slide above it, which was Chapel Slide, that we fixed. That was depositing roughly 7,000 tons of basically fine sand down into the Miners Gulch Reach. So you can imagine what that looked like. It was a depositional area full of sand and small gravel, but underneath was the historic channel, which consisted of larger cobble and boulders.
So the lack of habitat complexity, essentially no connectivity with the riparian area, and just simplified habitat was the reason why this was really an important restoration project.
One of those things that's a little bit unique about the Vermilion is it offers a lot of resources. Over time it's been managed for timber in the area. It's been an area that's been popular for gold mining over time. Like I mentioned, recreation, including hunting, fishing. So it's trying to supply a lot of needs out there. And one of those things that I felt has been important about being there is we've taken a lot over time from the Vermilion, and now it's time to give back.
were definitely top notch. They worked nonstop till we had the project done. Yeah, it was long days, you know, hot, long days. It's, you know, you're on basically like a salt mine down there. It's all reflective white cobble for 5 weeks. It can burn anybody out, and they just kept rolling with it. So yeah, that's half the battle, having a good contractor for sure.
I think the thing I enjoyed the least was probably moving all that dirt at the beginning. We had to, I can't remember, it took 3 or 4 days, and at least 5 days. We moved a lot of dirt. We had, I think, 6 dump trucks going steady and loading with an excavator and pushing it with a cat. And it just got a little tedious after all week. It's nice to get back in the excavator and start building structures.
The logistics of the Miners Gulch project were dynamic, and they kept Craig and I on our toes.
We had 4 or 5 dump trucks, 2 loaders, 2 excavators, and a skidder running at one time. So there was a lot of stuff happening at once.
The root wads we took off the Forest Service land up the roadways and set up an old hay rack log trailer, put a big platform on the front so we could stack them up on there high, and haul all those in there too. And they're 65 feet long, so that was quite a challenge as well.
You know, we're trying to make this thing look and function similar to, you know, reference condition.
Lots of big cobble incorporated into our riffles.
600 yards of sorted 16 to 24 inch cobble.
Lots of big boulders incorporated into our runs.
400 cubic yards of larger boulder.
And a lot of wood.
And roughly 400 root balls.
Now once we got the floodplain cut, then we started with a channel, roughed in the channel. So we wanted to build the dimensions of our channel and make sure that we had our widths right, our depths right, where our pools were going to be.
The big woody pools are good for the big fish, migratory fish, to hide in. They'll come up a stream in late June and not spawn until September, so they need a place to hide from and be secure over the summer months.
One of the important parts of this project is reconnecting the river to its floodplain. The river was pretty entrenched, migrated a bunch, but really had no connection to the floodplain or the riparian area. Riparian areas are super important for bank stability, for large woody debris recruitment, even for terrestrial inputs.
When you have material that's deposited on your floodplain, that'll help eventually with the reestablishment of the vegetation, which ultimately is kind of what we want. We want to grow a forest on the floodplains.
Sometimes we plant in the fall, but more times than not, we get our planting stock in the following spring and go dive into the riparian revegetation effort and fencing and irrigation system as well.
No light in the distance, we were shadows holding on. All the things I resisted, now far from gone. Use your heart as a fortress to keep bombs. All the weapons are useless, so can you just sit down your guard before everything is mine? Use your heart as a fortress. How'd you get so far away from me? How'd you get so far away from me?
We've got 4 pumps running, Mark IIIs, and they're running probably 14 to 17 sprinkler heads per pump. And yeah, we're just trying to
dump as much water on it once a week as we can. Cottonwoods were the key species to get in here on this site, but we were going to put conifers and shrubs as well.
These structures we're hoping will be able to hold banks that are unstable long enough for this vegetation to grow to the point where it's viable.
After the runoff event, we did witness and notice that there was the flood event did access the newly graded floodplain, deposited a lot of fines on top of the floodplain, and it functioned exactly the way we were hoping it would.
We're already starting to see some gravel sorting at the tailats of pools. We're starting to see some organic material deposited in the riparian area thanks to some of that wood that was put in the floodplain. The plants that were planted earlier this year, the cottonwoods are looking excellent thanks to the hard work of the Forest Service.
You know, it's good, clean work, and it's fun, and you get to see yourself accomplish something really cool at the end. And it's a really cool experience as well to learn stuff about hydrology and how the stream works and get to restore the stream. It's really cool.
If we screwed something up in the past, there's a satisfaction in knowing that you're trying to get it back. You know what I mean? So that's pretty satisfying.
I think the ultimate hope for the Vermilion River is that we can sustain it as a native salmonid stronghold. Like I said, this is one of the best places for native bull trout and cutthroat we have left.
The Vermilion's really unique around here in that its size, it's good size. It's not just a small stream. It's cold. The land ownership is nearly all Forest Service, and it has a lot of potential. I call it the river of potential.
Can you just let me go before everything is gone? He's a heart is a fortress. He's a heart is a fortress. He's a heart is a fortress.
By helicopter, horseback, and the sweat of their brow, a team of biologists from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, New Mexico Department of Game and Fish, and the U.S. Forest Service endeavor to return the threatened Gila trout to its former range in the American Southwest. Whether stocking large adult Gila trout or freshly fertilized eggs, the aims are the same: expand the rare trout's range, get it off the threatened species list, and create more opportunity for anglers to catch this pretty, coppery yellow trout found nowhere else in the world except for the headwaters of the Gila River.
It's a beautiful fish, you know, its coloration, its copper color, the way it looks in the water while it swims by is just amazing. And working in the Gila wilderness is, you know, the first wilderness within the the United States, which is kind of a special place to work. It's one of those things, working with an endangered species, that's really special. You get to put all of your effort into trying to conserve a species to try to get it, off the endangered species list. We're looking at a fish that has probably lost a lot of genetic diversity. So when we're breeding fish in Mora National Fish Hatchery and we're raising them there, we need to make sure that we're not spawning fish to lose even more genetic diversity. So we can try to conserve as much of the genetics as possible between lineages and among lineages.
Gila trout was one of the first species listed. It was listed under the precursor to the Endangered Species Act. So that was, I think, in 1966, and then listed as endangered under the Endangered Species Act in 1973. A lot of work was done by the Fish and Wildlife Service and the states of Arizona and New Mexico, and it was downlisted in 2006. And at that time, the Fish and Wildlife Service implemented a special rule that allowed for angling. So that's why we're able to provide angling for this trout, even though it is listed under ESA. And the current status is as threatened.
Gila trout are basically an icon to the Southwest, and that's really, to me, is what it means is wilderness and wild places. This is the first designated wilderness in the country, and Gila trout are a result of that designation. So I think that the unique experience that is offered to anglers, I don't think that can be found anywhere else, and I think that's what really draws people here. It's not like your other typical fish, it doesn't necessarily get as big, but it takes you into these places that are so remote and so beautiful that most people don't ever get to them, and it's kind of neat that the foresight of these people, like Aldo Leopold, that designated this, are actually what gives me my job today and what makes this possible, this whole recovery effort, because without that, Gila trout wouldn't be around. So really, I think that's what it symbolizes, and I think that anglers and then the local people need to really take account of that and really appreciate what we have here.
It just strikes me this is a journey. We're here with the main biologist for Gila trout from the several offices, the Forest Service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, New Mexico Game and Fish, and doing something we've never tried before, putting eggs directly into the gravel from hatchery, but fish that we spawn with wild parents, and taking a stream that's currently empty and putting Gila trout back to see how they do. And when you look at this landscape and walk up here, it is a journey. You come from the valley floor that's dry and desert, and then you come up here and there's actually water. And now there's going to be trout too, which is pretty neat. One of the huge challenges of the Gila is it's rough country. And because it's rough, that's probably why it's been protected. And now we put protections here, but it has limited influence from man. The downfall of that is it's tough. It's tough for us to get in and out of habitat for Gila trout. And when we're trying to bring in fish, we need to bring in mule teams, big pack strings, a lot of equipment. And right now with the fires, it's been hard to get up the trails. There's blowdown and stuff like that. So being able to downsize to eggs, they're very light, easy to carry. The neat part about eyed eggs, they don't even have to be in water. So water's heavy, we can carry them in wet paper towels on ice. They'll do very, very well, and then outplant them directly. And so it's another tool in the toolbox that helps us get to these inaccessible streams and help them recover faster. It's the experience to fish a Gila trout and to experience this country in the Southwest. Very unique, very undisturbed, very limited, not accessed by very many people. And that's really the magic of it. That's what Gila trout represent. And they're our indicator for this. This is a tough environment. They're an indicator for us to see the healthiness of the ecosystem. And that's why I think the biologists get so passionate about Gila trout, because they give us an indication of how are things doing in a really changing and fire-sculpted landscape now.
I am a New Mexico native, and there's something just really special about coming down to the Gila and being able to put a line in the water and pull out a Gila trout, which is one of our amazing native species. And so, yeah, we can go catch rainbow and brown trout all day other places, but there's something really special about just coming up here, pulling one of those out of the water and seeing its beautiful coloration and the wild place that they live that's so special to what New Mexico is at its very core. Honestly, being in the Gila, it's always breathtaking, and it just kind of is a slap across the face when you're going from your hectic everyday life and stepping out into nature. The vast expanse of the Gila just kind of brings you back down to earth pretty quickly. And after about 2 hours, I pulled my first Gila trout out of the water. I was super excited. It was pretty small, but that doesn't matter to me because it was absolutely gorgeous. And I caught and released it, and hopefully it grows back into a big, beautiful trout that I can come back and try to catch again later.
You know, you can't come in here as a fish biologist and not think back to why you got started. For me, it was fishing streams that look very similar to where we are now in northern Wisconsin. They were limestone streams and running over rocks, and the fish weren't big, and maybe they weren't even plentiful, but it was the journey to see what was around each bend and the next pool and what might be there. And I see myself seeing the same things here in Sackatone Creek in the way southwestern corner of New Mexico. It's just incredible. It's an incredible place that I hope more people get to experience, and also that we can spread the word that this experience is out there. I think just the physical act of catching a Gila trout, for people that have done it and gone through the journey, it is that. It's a journey. It's about getting out here into places that haven't been touched very often, and it's not that common to see people. And it's that outdoor experience that this species brings, and shows us an indication of how healthy the streams are doing.
Ready? I think we're good to go. How's this going over here?
I'm Ryan Skeels. I am co-founder, brewer, bartender, janitor, etc. here at Bear Brewing. So we are in the Bear Brewing tap room here in Denver, Colorado. We are about 10 to 12 blocks from the South Platte River. Since Bear started, we have always had a focus on local Denver community, and we happened to meet Andrew, who has the program with bringing the greenback back.
So the process for this beer starts with our base beer called Berliner Weiss. It's a German-style sour beer, light, sour, pretty refreshing. Bring the green back utilizes spruce tips in that beer for flavor. What we do is we actually combine them with a smaller amount of beer and let them sit for a week or two.
For the Rare Fish, Rare Beer project, and that also came out of just me wanting to give back to the resource in native fish, and so we decided let's craft beer and native fish. I feel like they're the same brain cell that make people fish snobs and beer snobs. So why not teach craft beer lovers to love native fish and vice versa? So
yeah,
and the greenback in particular has really generated some interest because being the state fish and all. And what I like about it, I mean, it's very deliberate that the beers had to be made by breweries in the same watershed as the fish that they're celebrating. And where are we thinking about going?
Well,
the South Platte watershed.
Yeah.
Right. We could do Zimmerman Lake because that's a place where they've reestablished the greenback.
So this lake is surrounded by spruce trees, which are currently producing their spruce tips, and so gathering them here was a perfect combination of the fish and the beer.
I'm Andrew Todd. I'm a native to Colorado. For me, a watershed is very aquatic specific, being that I'm an aquatic biologist, and the health of the watershed it's in totality. If you've got a portion of it that's impacted by something, it affects the health of everything downstream. It's all related. We're at the headwaters of the Poudre River, and this is a place called Zimmerman Lake. This is one of the places that they've reintroduced the greenback cutthroat trout. Oh my God, there's a fish. See him? It's one of the core conservation populations for the greenback cutthroat trout at this point.
I'm Kevin Greer. I'm a co-owner of Bear Brewing Company in Denver. I kind of do a lot of everything there. Prior to opening the brewery, I was a water and wastewater engineer, and I currently serve on the Water Quality Control Commission for the state of Colorado, and I brew beer with lots of water.
Oh yeah, party! No hot. Happy New Year.
The whole goal of the Rare Beer, Rare Fish project is to bring attention to native species, which are cutthroat trout, and the one that's native to the South Platte watershed. We make a lot of sour beers. We worked with Andrew to create a beer that we thought had some connection to the watershed and to the greenback cutthroat.
What do you think?
Spruce is relatively common around here, and spruce tips are a really nice ingredient. You know, gives a lot of citrus and piney character to beer. When we pair that sour beer with the spruce, the tips, and they give that both citrus and piney character, it's a very unique, interesting, light, easy drinking sour beer.
All right,
Cheers.
Cheers to spruce tips and the greenback.
Cheers to